The Subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations and Related Programs will now come to order. As this is a hybrid markup, we must address a few housekeeping matters first. For today's markup, the chair or staff designated by the chair may mute participants' microphones when they are not under recognition for the purposes of eliminating inadvertent background noise. Members are responsible for muting and unmuting themselves. If I notice that you have not unmuted yourself, I will ask you if you would like the staff to unmute you. If you indicate approval by nodding, staff will unmute your microphone. After my opening statement, I will recognize Ranking Member Rogers for his opening statement and then turn to Chair DeLauro and Ranking Member Granger for any statements they wish to make. Following that, I will recognize any members that wish to make a statement. Additionally, House rules require me to remind you that we have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing at any of our hearings or markups. That email address has been provided in advance to your staff. This evening, we are gathering to consider the fiscal year 2023 State, Foreign Operations, and Related Programs Appropriations Bill. The bill provides $64.57 billion in new discretionary budget authority, which is $8.5 billion above the fiscal 2022 enacted level and $1.76 billion below the fiscal year 2023 request. The resources provided through this bill to diplomatic, development, and humanitarian efforts enables the United States to be on the front lines every single day, working to save lives, promote stability, and increase engagement. I have appreciated the sincere and constructive input of my colleagues in the crafting of this bill. This year, we received over 6,800 requests, reinforcing just how important our global programs are to addressing today's many challenges. I also want to thank Chair Rosa DeLauro for recognizing the importance of these investments and providing increased resources to our top line. I'm also proud of the historic investment of over $11 billion that the fiscal 23 House bill includes for global health, a field where U.S. leadership is literally saving lives each and every day. The bill provides $2 billion to support the United States pledge to the upcoming 7th replenishment for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And the United States is hosting this replenishment conference, and the strong support provided in this bill will set this critical institution on the path to solidify the gains that the world has made against these three diseases and ending the HIV/AIDS epidemic once and for all. The United States' role in this fight cannot be understated, and I hope each member feels both a sense of accomplishment and urgency to finish the job. Nevertheless, the devastating COVID-19 pandemic shows how fragile all of our development gains truly are. That is why the bill invests $1 billion into global health security programs and bolsters additional programming in maternal health, tuberculosis, nutrition, and family planning, which are central to healthy and strong communities. We know diseases don't respect borders, so it is in our own interest to have strong, functioning health systems accessible to everyone, both domestically and globally. The pandemic also caused significant economic and social harm. The development investments in this bill are crucial to reversing the damage and get back to achieving the sustainable development goals by 2030, including eliminating extreme poverty, achieving an AIDS-free generation, and supporting efforts to build inclusive and equitable and accountable societies for everyone. The House bill also prioritizes the resources, programs, and policies for the protection and advancement of women and girls. Neglecting the reproductive health care of women will limit any progress we can make in providing economic opportunity or bolstering women's political leadership. More needs to be done to recognize the ongoing injustice felt by half of the population who disproportionately bears the burden of poverty, poor health, violence, and climate change. The funding in this bill moves us in the right direction. We are also increasing our commitment to combating the climate crisis, including a $1.6 billion contribution to the Green Climate Fund and an additional $1.6 billion for bilateral climate programs. We are quite literally running out of time. This is a climate emergency. Climate change is only becoming more expensive, more dangerous, and more devastating to our planet, with deadly effects here at home and overseas. Nowhere is this more true than for small islands, developing states in the Caribbean, who have specific and special vulnerabilities that we address in this bill. The bill also supports rebuilding our nation's diplomatic and development workforce, one that reflects the diversity of the American people. We build on the strides made last year to provide increased funding authority and guidance to push the agencies under our jurisdiction to move faster and be more bold in addressing the entrenched institutional barriers to diversity. Lastly, the House Markup affirms our support for key allies and partners around the world, including Israel and Jordan, assists countries facing down Russian aggression, and provides strategic support for our neighbors in Central America. We heard from members, and our bill reflects the importance of supporting the people of Central America by addressing corruption, combating violence against women, and standing up for human rights. I was pleased to be able to participate in the Summit of the Americas a few weeks ago with some of my colleagues. Congresswoman Norma Torres was there also, and this bill supports a renewed focus on our hemisphere and the commitments made by the administration to the summit, including the needs of our neighbors in the Caribbean that have too often been neglected. The bill also reaffirms strong support for achieving a negotiated two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and increases our humanitarian and economic assistance for the Palestinian people. We also provide support for Africa and the countries in the Indo-Pacific as we have a mutual interest in deeper and stronger partnerships for the future. My colleagues, when we hosted UN Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield a few weeks ago, I reminded us of Secretary Blinken's quote. He said, "We're better off at the table, not outside the room." The SWOPS bill is about showing up for allies such as in Ukraine, showing up for the most vulnerable, such as the people in the Horn of Africa facing the worst drought in 40 years, showing up to advocate for U.S. interests and values, such as the United Nations and the multilateral development banks. Dialogue and engagement are always the most promising path forward, even when there are deep disagreements. This is how progress is made, and I'm proud to say that the fiscal 2023 House Mark for the State Department, Foreign Operations, and related programs put the resources behind this commitment. Before I close, I want to recognize the collaboration and friendship of a colleague on the SWOP subcommittee, Chairman Congressman David Price. Dave and I have served on this subcommittee together for many years. He also serves as the chair of House Democracy Partnership. And his commitment to the agencies and issues addressed in this bill is known to us all. It's my great honor to announce a new legislative strengthening program named after Chairman Price in the fiscal 23 House Mark. His commitment to bringing citizens together and building the role of legislative bodies in a bipartisan way in developing democracies will be known for years to come, despite his departure from this subcommittee and the Congress. And so let me just thank our staff who put this bill together. This is a massive bill, funding and informing how our country engages with the whole world. It's quite a job. But there's always a tremendous member interest in SWOPs, and our staffs work overtime to craft this bill on time and on budget. And so, Aaron, I want to thank you, and I want to thank Celia and Craig and Jean and Marin and Jonathan, Jason, Susan Adams, Jamie, John, and also Greg and Julie on my staff, everyone who has played such an important role in helping us put this bill together. You all did really a lot of the heavy lifting, I must say. And so thank you for your passion and your commitment and your service. So before I turn to Ranking Member Rogers for his opening remarks, we're scheduled to consider this bill in the full committee next week, so I would request that any amendments be reserved until then. Mr. Rogers, thank you for your cooperation and that of your staff on this work, on this subcommittee, and please proceed with any remarks that you may have.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations on bringing forward the fiscal year 2023 State Foreign Ops Appropriations Bill. The bill before us provides $64.58 billion for the Department of State, Foreign Operations, and related programs. It's a 15% increase over the current level I have serious concerns about this funding level and how the resources were allocated in the bill. As I told the administration witnesses that came before the subcommittee seeking billions more in spending this year, increases of this magnitude are not realistic and create expectations that cannot be met. Before I address additional concerns, I want to thank the chair for accommodating member requests on both sides of the aisle where you were able to. I also appreciate the $3.3 billion included for our great ally Israel, with continued support for other key partners around the globe, and a welcome focus on our Pacific Island partners. I'm also pleased that the bill maintains robust funding for embassy security to help ensure our people and facilities overseas are safe. I think we can all agree these are extraordinary times for American security and those of our allies and partners around the world. As Russia continues its brutal assault on the people of Ukraine, Putin's partners in Beijing are accelerating efforts to dominate the Indo-Pacific and overturn the rules-based international order. In this circumstance, America's priorities should be clear. The centerpiece of American strategy needs to be rallying and defending our fellow democracies, as well as other supporters of the rules-based system against this axis of autocrats. If we are to deter the imperial aspirations of our great power rivals, we must invest in the tools of hard power. Unfortunately, this bill falls short on the most fundamental priority, protecting our national security. Instead of providing robust increases for security assistance to key allies and partners, the bill instead holds flat or cuts these key investments. In addition, the bill includes conditions and other punitive measures on the aid for some of our most important strategic partners. This approach is counterproductive to our own interests, especially at this critical moment of history. What could be more important than our national security? According to the bill before us, the answer is an extreme climate change agenda, the United Nations, increasing the size of the bureaucracy, and other misguided priorities. Despite an increase of nearly $9 billion in this bill over the enacted level, nothing was added for security assistance to counter China's malign influence and deter aggression in the Indo-Pacific. Yet there's a whopping $1.6 billion made available for the Green Climate Fund. Funding has also increased for the United Nations and other international organizations, including by providing first-time contributions to 2 new organizations. This bill also drops long-standing conditions on some of the most scrutinized UN organizations. Finally, the most extreme and concerning parts of this bill are the changes made to the long-standing measures that protect the sanctity of life. These are common sense provisions that have enjoyed bipartisan support for decades. Of greatest concern is the removal of the most important condition in any state foreign operations bill, that no funds can be used to pay for abortion. This change is a non-starter, but it doesn't stop there. The bill also includes a permanent prohibition of the Mexico City policy, weakens the Kemp-Kasten restrictions on coercive abortion, increases funding to UNFPA, and many other partisan changes. These radical measures are the surest way to jeopardize support for this bill, and there's no chance of passing this bill into law with such extreme policy positions and misplaced funding priorities. These issues must be addressed as the process moves forward. Before I close, I want to join the chairman in thanking the staff from both sides of the aisle for all of their hard work on behalf of all of us. Their efforts are appreciated. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Now I will turn to our full committee chair, Chairwoman Rosa DeLauro, for her statement.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Lee and Ranking Member Rogers, and to the members of the subcommittee for your work on this bill. And I also add my thanks to the subcommittee staff. I'll say it many, many times over and over again. You keep our names on the door. So thank you very, very much. For the past year and a half, congressional Democrats and the Biden administration have reaffirmed America's presence as a leader on the world stage. And as Chairwoman Lee and I've consistently agreed on, our nation and our world are safer and healthier when, alongside defense, we provide significant funding for development and diplomacy. With that as our guiding force, this bill serves as another significant step in our work to lead the world in confronting global challenges, and that begins with supporting our allies. The bill provides continued support for our closest partners, such as Israel and Jordan, and for countries facing continuous threats from Russian aggression. Combined with the resources passed by this committee this spring, this bill makes critical investments to help the Ukrainian people, who are suffering the consequences of Russia's unprovoked attack, and strengthens our allies in the region as they fight to protect freedom and democracy. At the same time, we are reaffirming our leadership at organizations like the United Nations and increasing our funding for key UN agencies. The atrocities being committed in Ukraine further highlight the desperate need to promote democracy, human rights, and anti-corruption efforts globally. In this bill, we strengthen and bolster democracy abroad with historic funding for democracy programs. And as we promote democracy and support our allies and partners, we provide over $1.7 billion to promote a free and open Indo-Pacific and counter growing malign influences in developing countries. At the same time, we are supporting those who need us most. This bill responds to the changing needs of our world's most vulnerable, needs exacerbated by natural disasters, conflict, rising food and fuel prices, and the pandemic. We are providing over $8 billion for migration and refugee assistance and international disaster assistance to provide historic support for the 274 million people worldwide in need of humanitarian aid and protection. This is the right thing to do and the safe thing to do, because as that pandemic has made abundantly clear, keeping others safe keeps us safe as well. Viruses do not stop at the border. And for that reason, we are continuing to strengthen our global public health infrastructure, confronting the COVID-19 pandemic and preventing future pandemics, with almost $11 billion for these efforts, including $1 billion for global health security. We are supporting the health of families and communities all over the world. Along with fighting infectious diseases, we are improving maternal and child health outcomes all over the world. In that vein, the bill advances women's health care and women's rights around the world. 299,000 women annually die of pregnancy-related causes because they cannot access the care they need. And 218 million women worldwide need contraception and cannot get it. That is why we will continue fighting for every woman and every girl around the world by funding programs that support them, family planning, and the United Nations Population Fund. We are also removing the Helms Amendment restrictions and the global gag rule on non-government organizations, repealing punitive and unnecessary restrictions on safe and legal abortion. As we have done over the past year and a half, we are leading the world to confront the climate crisis. We are expanding global efforts to address environmental threats, reduce emissions by investing over $3.6 billion. These problems can only be tackled by partnering with others globally. This bill gives us the resources to strengthen U.S. leadership in this fight. And finally, I want to take a moment to honor former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, who we lost this year. Secretary Albright was a true national treasure and a dear friend. Working with Chairwoman Lee and in recognition of Secretary Albright's historic ceiling-busting career, this bill names in her honor a $50 million fund to support political leadership opportunities for women. And in honor of Chairman David Price's retirement, this subcommittee has created a $5 million legislative strengthening program at USID to build the capacity of national legislative bodies and the civil society organizations that interact with them. Strengthening democratic institutions abroad has been an important priority for Mr. Price, especially his work as chairman of the House Democratic Partnership. I'm so proud that these investments reflect the values that we hold so dear as a nation and make the world a safer, healthier, and a more habitable place. Again, my thanks to Chairman Lee and Ranking Member Rogers, and I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll turn now to our ranking member, Ms. Granger, for any comments that she may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for yielding and for your work on the fiscal year 2023 State Foreign Operations Appropriations Bill. I also want to recognize the work of the former chairman of the committee and the current ranking member of the subcommittee, Mr. Rogers. I previously served as chair of this subcommittee and know that this bill funds many programs that have bipartisan support, the most important being the funding for Israel. I'm pleased to see that Chairwoman Lee has included $3.3 billion for Israel's security. Even though we can agree on some spending priorities in the bill, the 15% funding increase overall is far too high and is based on a funding level that passed the House without support from Republicans. At a time of record high national debt and soaring inflation, we should try to reduce spending wherever we can. In addition to my concerns about spending, there are very serious policy issues with this bill that will prevent members of our side of the aisle from supporting it. Once again, there are alarming changes to long-standing provisions that protect life. This bill removes language prohibiting foreign aid from being used to pay for abortions. The bill also includes a permanent repeal of the Mexico City policy and other controversial changes. These are extreme positions widely opposed by members on my side of the aisle and by American taxpayers. As I made very clear last year, moving forward in this way risks the bipartisan support that global health programs have had for many years. The bill also includes too many conditions on aid to our key partners around the world. As Russia wages war in Ukraine and China continues its aggressive actions, we should be focusing on making our partnerships stronger, not weaker. I'm concerned that more conditions will push our partners away. Finally, the bill drops long-standing language about two of the most controversial international organizations. Conditions on the United Nations Human Rights Council and the United Nations Relief and Works Agency have been in place since I was chair of the subcommittee, and I'm very concerned that they have been dropped. We must not walk away from our commitment to ensure oversight and demand accountability for the bias against Israel at the United Nations. As this process moves forward, the concerns I've laid out must be addressed to get votes from members on our side of the aisle. The long-standing language carried in previous bills must be retained, and the controversial policies that were added must be dropped. With that framework in place, we will work to reach agreement on funding so this bill can get signed into law. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you very much, Ms. Granger. Now, at this point, I'd like to open the floor to any member who would like to be recognized for short comments about the bill. Please raise your hand, and I will call on those members wishing to be recognized. If there are no members who wish to be recognized, as the hour is late, I must say the bill is open for amendments. There being no amendments, I will recognize Ms. Meng for a motion.
I move that the bill be favorably reported to the full committee.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. No?
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. So if there's no further business, I ask for unanimous consent that the staff be allowed to make technical and conforming changes to the bill and report. Thank you all again very much. One final note, please leave the bill and report on the table for subcommittee staff to collect. And to the staff, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.